I really like this bridge. I really like the tone that this bridge adds to my Jaguar. I would definitely buy this bridge again. And did I mention it has a sweet tone? If you've watched any of the videos on my channel by now, you've probably realised that I'm always looking for cool upgrades for my Squier offset guitars, and I'm also always looking for parts that will be a viable alternative to the cool, expensive, trendy parts that are often used on offset guitars. If you've been subscribed to my channel for a little while, you would have followed the journey with me by now, checking out all the different Fender tremolos that they offer, and I've got the AVRI video coming really soon. Now, having checked out all the different tremolos, I've been diving headlong into a world of different offset bridges. The really popular ones are your Stay Trem, your Mastery, your Halon, and the Fender Custom Shop RSD. And I've been trying all different kind of DIY experiments to come up with alternatives for these bridges. The first one I tried was the Goto In-Tune compensated brass saddles. I'll have a video on that coming up soon. The second set of saddles I saw that I was really intrigued by were the Tone Ninja saddles, which are compensated steel saddles in a design very similar to the Mastery style. And I've been looking for a number of different saddle options to experiment with different alternatives to these expensive, cool bridges. So you can imagine how excited I was when I was scrolling through Facebook and I saw a sponsored advert for this. So the cool kind of trendy bridges, or the popular offset bridges, have 3 or 4 things in common. The first one is they have increased mass. Now, partly that's in the saddles, they have increased saddle mass. These bridges also often have a thicker base plate material than what you get on a normal offset bridge. The second thing is kind of self-explanatory and related, is that they therefore have less parts. So your Halon bridge has 3 saddles, 2 strings on each saddle. Your Mastery and your RSD bridges have 2 saddles, 3 strings on each. Having less parts means that there's less chance for rattle. Same with the Stay Trem. There's less adjustment screws, and so therefore there's less chance for those parts to rattle. Also, having more strings on a fewer number of saddles will increase the resonance, because you've got more mass under the strings. The third thing is that they're made out of superior quality materials. And the fourth thing is that they all have deep saddle grooves to stop your strings popping out of the saddles. So when I saw the sponsored ad for this bridge, I immediately followed the link to the Reverb store, and I sent Sven, the owner of Casterbridge and Dietrich parts, a message. I explained to him that I'm looking for different saddles for offset bridges, that I've already purchased a couple of different saddles, and I'm in the process of experimenting with alternatives to these expensive, desirable bridges. He was really excited by the prospect of the Casterbridge being used on offset guitars. He was really enthusiastic, and he actually sent me this for free to check out. So full disclosure, this is a free sample that he sent me, but that doesn't change my opinion or my experience using it. He's really keen to see whether people are excited in the offset community about this bridge, and if there is, he will look into manufacturing a dedicated offset bridge. This is the Strat one, and it's designed to be installed without any modification needed to your bridge, but we'll come on to that later. Sven at Dietrich Parts makes really cool, innovative guitar hardware. The piece you will most likely have seen is the String Butler, which is used by a number of famous musicians, notably including Brent Hinds and Phil X. And it is designed to guide the strings on your Gibson style headstock so that they travel in a straight line through the nut to prevent them snagging in the nut and going out of tune, particularly on the D and G strings, which happens all the time if you're using a 3-on-3 style guitar. So the installation was pretty straightforward for this. It took a little bit of head scratching to work out the best way to do it, and it did take a little bit of modification because, as I mentioned, this is designed for Stratocasters and not for Jaguars or Jazzmasters or Mustangs. So the screws were all much longer because they were designed for a much longer bridge design. But I'll now show you a little montage of me installing this and the mods that are necessary. If you have any questions about this, feel free to ask me and I'll go through it in more detail, but it is quite straightforward. And like I said, please let me know if you're interested in a dedicated offset version that wouldn't require these mods, and Sven will look into making it. bridge and tailpiece you have on your guitar fundamentally shapes and informs the tone that your guitar has, both acoustically and plugged in. So how does the Casterbridge change your guitar's tone? Does it really add a bell-like quality and increased overtones? Okay, so as I mentioned, I really like this bridge, but what's so good about it? Well, there are 8 things that I particularly like about it. The first one is the looks. I think it's got a really cool kind of retro futuristic Art Deco kind of vibe that fits really, really well with the Jaguar aesthetic. I think it's got that really cool kind of 60s space age vibe to it, and I think it really, really works with the Jaguar look. Second thing is the feel on the hand, the feel when playing. This bridge has absolutely 0 sharp corners or sharp edges. All the edges on it are really smooth and really sleek, and the intonation screws actually sit underneath the saddle. So they're not even flush on the top, they sit below the top of the saddle. And so this means you get a really, really nice feeling on the hand. There's nothing sharp, there's nothing uncomfortable there at all. It's a really, really, really comfortable playing experience. The third thing is it doesn't rattle. Because there's only 2 intonation screws, and then there's 2 screws holding the saddle to the mounting plate, and 2 screws holding the mounting plate and the saddle to the bridge, there are very few moving parts, which means there's nothing to buzz or rattle, which is a really good bonus, particularly compared to like a stock Jazzmaster barrel bridge. The fourth thing is the response of the guitar. Even unplugged now, the guitar is so resonant. It feels so snappy and so dynamic. It feels really sturdy and rock solid. It's just given a really solid and resonant feel to the strings, which carries through both unplugged and plugged in. So my fifth thing that I really like about this is the tone. Plugged in, it really adds like a full low end, nice warm mids, and really chimey sweet highs. I really like the tone that this bridge adds to my Jaguar. It's got all the right frequencies, it takes away any hint of harshness in the high end, and it just has amazing string definition and an amazing balance between the strings. And did I mention it has a sweet tone? The sixth thing I think is really cool about it is you don't have to re-drill your bridge. With the bobber mod for the Jaguar or Mustang bridge, you have to drill new holes. So you can see here I drilled 6 new holes. I drilled a hole here, 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 and here for the new saddles. I didn't need to drill this one or this one. But for this kind of bobber mod, to add a 3 saddle design, you need to drill your bridge, which is all well and good if you have a bridge, but it's also quite annoying. You have to do it kind of carefully. And as you can see, the saddles don't meet. There's gaps in between the saddles. I haven't yet installed the Tone Ninja saddles on a bridge, but I need to do the same thing there as well. I need to drill 3 new holes in the bridge, which is a bit time consuming, and it's a bit hit or miss if you don't have really precise tools as to whether you would do it correctly or not. With this design, I think it's really cool that there's a mounting plate that lines up with the screws in the saddle and the screws in your bridge, and that it lines up perfectly without needing to re-drill your bridge. Now, because this is designed for strats and not an offset, this is a Fender Japan bridge that I've attached this Casterbridge to. And unfortunately, the saddle spacing wasn't quite the same on this Fender Japan bridge as it is on a Stratocaster. The saddles on this were slightly narrower than on the Strat bridge, so I guess the string spacing is perhaps slightly different. Now, on a purpose-built offset version, hopefully that wouldn't be the case, and it really didn't take much work. It was kind of 10 minutes with a small round file, but that's still much easier than re-drilling the bridge. The 7th thing I really like about this bridge is the price. For the Fender Japan steel bridge, it costs £17 in the UK, and the Casterbridge is about £65, including postage. So all in all, we're looking at about £82 for this bridge. That's half the price of a Halon, and if you're looking to buy a Mastery, the cost is going to be even greater. If you're looking to buy an RSD, the cost is going to be even more again. You can get a Statrum for a similar price to this if you're willing to wait, but the Statrum is quite a different design to this. This is much more in line with the RSD, the Halon or the Mastery concept. So if you're looking for a really killer, really great sounding, really comfortable bridge that's not going to be really expensive, I highly recommend this bridge. The last thing I really like, number 8, is the intonation. Now when I shared this on the Offset Guitars Facebook group, there were a number of concerns raised that it might not intonate very well. And I know that Lord Fuzzman has done a really comprehensive breakdown of all the different offset bridges you can get. And one of his comments is that he doesn't like the bridges that lack the adjustability of a 6 saddle design. Now, I'm in a very different school of thought to him. I really like simple compensated bridges. I love the Faber bridge on this. This is a stainless steel bridge with 2 brass compensated saddles. This guitar intonates perfectly, and it's really resonant. I love how resonant and loud and kind of vibrant a simple bridge is like this. And they still intonate fine. This intonates perfectly. And I don't see any need for individual saddles. I much prefer the increased mass of one big piece of metal. Similarly with this is still a work in progress. I've just ordered a new neck for it from Musicraft, which I'm really excited to get. But I previously had these saddles on a different Mustang, my Bullet Mustang. And again, the intonation was perfect. And I don't see any need for individual saddles. I actually prefer a 3 saddle design on my telly than a 6 saddle. And again, this intonates very well. In fact, one of the things Sven has designed it for is to improve the intonation on guitars that struggle to get their intonation in right. The adjustability is a little bit fiddly because it's not designed for this setup. However, it is possible to fine-tune your intonation very easily, and the intonation, I could fiddle around with it more to get it in perfectly, but but I would say the intonation is 99% in. And I've got a clip demonstrating the intonation for those of you who don't believe me. And you'll notice that my tuner is so sensitive that I was struggling to get the guitar reading in tune just with the open strings, let alone played at the 12th fret. And you'll see the intonation on this is very, very close indeed. Okay, we're now 2 weeks on from the initial kind of review and feedback that I gave that you've been watching so far. And I've been editing through the cons section, and I'm not quite happy with the way I've done it. I don't think that I have represented the product as well as I could have done. And so I'm now refilming this section to represent the Casterbridge and the cons or the problems I had with it in a little bit more detail and in a more accurate way. So some of what I recorded before I think is fine, and you'll see that in the other background, in the other outfit. And then I'm going to add in some new comments here to add to or to replace what I said before. Okay, so this is a totally honest review, and there are 3 cons that I can think of, or maybe 4. The first one is the adjustment is a little bit fiddly. Like I said, because it is designed to operate on a different bridge, normally these adjustment screws are really long, and you can just push the whole bridge up and down using these 2 screws. Because it's had to be put into such a compact space on a Jaguar, it means you can't just move these screws up and down because there's not enough space for there to be a spring or a significant amount of a spring between the adjustment screws and the saddle. And so to get the intonation set, you have to adjust how tightly this screw is done up here, how large a gap you want between the mounting plate and the saddle, and then you have to set with a spring how much distance you want between the mounting plate and the bridge. But in my opinion, intonation is something that you kind of set and forget. Unless you're changing your string gauges all the time, which I'm not, you can just set it, and maybe once every 6 months you might just double check that it's still in. So it's a little bit fiddly, sure, but and I can see that that's not going to be for everyone, but once you've got it in, it should be fine. The second thing is, the Casterbridge doesn't come with string grooves in it. So my first reevaluation of what I said is with con number 2, and that's adding string grooves to the Casterbridge. Now I'm on the Casterbridge website right here, the String Butler website, and right from the outset, Sven says that for guitars with a top-loader bridge, you will need to add string grooves to the saddle. So I tried playing it without the string grooves in it, and I have a very aggressive right hand, I also hybrid pick, and I found that the strings were just moving on the bridge and it didn't feel very stable. Now Sven does this partly because it's designed primarily for a string through design, where the saddle is going to be a lot closer to where the string comes through, so you're going to have a much greater break angle on the saddle. And the other thing that Sven said is that he wouldn't groove it before sending it out so that I could get the string spacing perfect on my guitar. And some people like that, and if you buy a cloisonne bridge with brass saddles, you're going to have to groove that as well, like an ABR-on style. So it's not unique to Casterbridge, there are many bridges that you have to groove the saddles yourself, but I would kind of just like to get a bridge with the grooves ready cut so that I don't have to do them myself. It wasn't hard, but you can see here that on the top 3 strings, which are the ones I did first, I have a slight second groove next to each of the strings because I slipped slightly when I was using the file. But I improved my filing technique so that the low strings are perfect. So I don't have any issues here, the strings don't pop out the saddles, I could get the saddles the exact depth that I wanted, but it is something to bear in mind. Because it's designed for string through bridges like I mentioned, those bridges will have enough downforce and enough pressure produced by the string going over the saddle that it won't need grooves. So I just wanted to be clear that Sven is upfront about that on the website, and that's not something that I had to discover through trial and error. The third con I've already mentioned. I had to slightly file in on the A and B saddles here on the bridge in order to get it to fit, but that may just be that this is a Japanese bridge and the Japanese string spacing is different. I need to double check that. The second caveat I want to address is the third con, which was the need for me to file the bridge to get the Casterbridge to fit. Now again, when you visit the full website for the Casterbridge, Sven has very clearly and carefully laid out the different fit options for different bridges, and he clearly outlines which bridges the Casterbridge will fit and which it won't. He also has really good blueprint diagrams showing which mounting holes you will need to use both in your bridge and in the mounting plate for different bridges. So he shows the compatibility for an American Standard Strat, Mexican Standard, American Standard or Deluxe from 1986 to 2007, American Vintage Hardtail, and American Vintage Narrow. So the problems I had with this bridge is that it's a made in Japan bridge. And Sven has understandably, especially with strats in mind, made the mounting plate compatible for American and Mexican Stratocaster bridge spacing. Now this is understandable, it makes sense, but it's something to bear in mind. A made in Japan bridge might have slightly different spacing, which is the reason I had to file the bridge in the first place to slightly widen the string spacing posts. So it's not really a con of the Casterbridge so much. It's more that I was just using it on a bridge that it's not compatible with. And I think particularly for offset guitars where there is a big cult following of made in Japan offsets, that's something to consider when planning on using the Casterbridge with your guitar, or for a Casterbridge model for the future for offsets if there is demand, that taking into consideration a made in Japan spacing might be useful. And lastly, number 4, having to cut these screws so that they fitted in an offset bridge. Again, it was very easy, it was very simple and straightforward, but again, it takes a little bit of effort. Now, all of these cons are because this is not designed for offset guitars. It's designed for a Strat, and if you put this on a Strat, you wouldn't have any of these cons. All 4 of these cons really are only because if you had this on a Strat, or if you have the Tele version on a Tele and you have a string through body, like most Strats and Teles have, then the adjustment is going to be as intended and will work perfectly. You won't need string grooves because of the tension of the strings over the saddle. You won't need to file or adjust your bridge to make it fit because it's designed for the most common Stratocaster and Telecaster bridges, the Mexican and the various versions of the American. And you won't have to adjust or modify any of the mounting screws because they're going to be the correct length as intended for those applications. So the cons aren't so much cons as things to bear in mind if you're planning to use one of these bridge saddles in a context it's not intended or designed to be used in. So, to conclude, this is a great sounding, a great feeling, a great looking, really functional, really comfortable bridge for your offset guitar. There are a couple of cons, but the pros far outweigh it, and it's a really, really good bridge that I really highly recommend, especially since the cons are primarily due to it being designed for a Strat rather than a Jaguar. The acid test for me is, if this guitar was lost or stolen, which gigging in London is not that far-fetched that this guitar could be stolen, would I buy this bridge again for an offset guitar? And the answer is yes, I would definitely buy this bridge again. I love the sweet, full, warm tone that it gives when plugged in. I really love the resonance that it adds to this guitar. I love the look, I think it looks really cool. It's so much more comfortable than even the stock Mustang bridge. I really, really like it. And I'm looking into getting a gold one for either my Mustang or my Jazzmaster. I do really like this bridge and I'm very tempted to get at least one of these, if not two more of these, for my other offset guitars. So I hope that's been helpful, I hope that's made sense. I highly recommend this, particularly if you enjoy kind of the modding process and the DIY aspect of things. If you've got any questions about the Casterbridge, please let me know. I'll get back to you. And yeah, I hope that's been interesting and informative. And until next time, I'll see you around.